Chapter 14 opens in the part of the day that tests who you really are. It's after 5. The shop hasn't slowed down the way it was supposed to. A customer stands too close to the counter with keys already in hand, watching every move like they're keeping score. A technician walks up and says, "It's done," but their voice doesn't sound finished. It sounds tired. The phone rings with someone asking for an update you're not ready to give yet because you haven't verified it. You feel the pressure in your body before you name it in your head. This is the moment where leadership shows up or slips. A capable but limited advisor reacts to relieve discomfort. They rush keys back to clear the lobby. They raise their voice slightly without noticing. They push technicians harder than the situation actually requires. They skip a step they meant to do, just this once, because everyone is watching and time feels tight. They tell themselves they'll catch it later. Later rarely comes. What they don't see yet is the real cost. The cost isn't always an immediate comeback. It's the tone that spreads through the building. When the front counter tightens up emotionally, the entire shop starts operating on urgency instead of standards. Technicians rush. Details get missed. Customers sense something is off even if they can't explain it. The shop becomes reactive instead of deliberate. A leader looks slower in the same moment. Not because they don't care. Not because they're soft. Because they're in control. They don't speed up their words to outrun pressure. They slow the moment down by tightening the process. They verify instead of guessing. They protect quality precisely when most people are tempted to sacrifice it. They understand that chaos rarely comes from workload alone. It comes from ownership being replaced with reaction. At this level, leadership isn't volume or authority by force. It's regulation. It's consistency. It's the ability to keep the same standards intact when the day is heavy as when it's calm. Most people learn this the hard way. There's a moment every advisor recognizes, the moment you feel yourself getting sharp. A tech says something obvious and you feel the snap rising. A customer repeats a promise and your chest tightens. Another issue lands on the counter at the exact second you're trying to finish something else. The instinct is force. Force feels like control. It isn't. Force is what shows up when process disappears. It creates fear, not urgency. Fear creates shortcuts. Shortcuts create mistakes. Mistakes create comebacks. And comebacks erode trust that took months to earn. What many people miss is how quickly tone spreads. If you're rushed, technicians rush. If technicians rush, quality slips. If quality slips, customers get uneasy. If customers get uneasy, conflict increases. That loop becomes the shop's personality if it isn't interrupted. Leadership at this tier starts internally. You regulate yourself before you regulate anyone else. You lower your voice instead of raising it. You say fewer words, not more. You return to ownership instead of reaction. This isn't about being quiet or passive. It's about being deliberate. Customers don't need you to be fast. They need you to be steady. Technicians don't need you to be loud. They need you to be fair. The shop doesn't need heroics. It needs consistency. The hardest truth is this: your emotional control becomes the operating climate of the shop. Whether you like it or not, people take their cues from you. Your timing becomes their timing. Your stress becomes their stress. Your calm becomes their calm. This chapter exists to lock that understanding in. Because leadership foundations aren't built on good days. They're built when you're tired, rushed, and tempted to cut corners. They're built when you choose process over pressure and ownership over reaction. When that choice becomes habitual, something changes. The shop steadies. Quality holds. People trust the environment again. And standards stop depending on how much energy you have left at the end of the day. That is what calm authority looks like before it ever becomes a method. Your tone sets the shop's temperature. Tone is not a personality trait. It is a signal. Long before anyone hears instructions, they feel whether the environment is safe, rushed, or unstable. In a shop, that signal comes from the front counter. When pressure rises, most people believe urgency requires intensity. They speak faster. They raise their voice slightly. They tighten their posture. None of it feels dramatic in the moment. It feels efficient. But the effect is immediate. Technicians mirror the pace they hear. When the counter sounds rushed, the bay speeds up. Speed without clarity creates skipped steps. Skipped steps create defects. Defects create rechecks and comebacks. The shop works harder while confidence drops. Customers mirror it too. A rushed tone tells them something is wrong. Even if the words are polite, the energy feels unstable. Customers start watching more closely, questioning more often, and trusting less easily. Conflict doesn't start with words. It starts with atmosphere. This is why tone matters more than phrasing. You can say the right thing in the wrong tone and still lose authority. You can say very little in a calm tone and stabilize the room. In highperformingshops.com is not accidental. It is enforced. Calm does not mean slow service. It means controlled service. It means deciding that the process will move faster than emotion. When leaders regulate their tone, they remove noise from the system. Everyone underneath them gains room to think. Tone also determines whether standards survive pressure. When leaders sound frantic, standards feel optional. People cut corners to relieve discomfort. When leaders sound steady, standards feel protected. People slow down just enough to do it right. This is why yelling never creates quality. It creates compliance at best and fear at worst. Fear makes people hide mistakes instead of fixing them. Hidden mistakes always surface later, usually with customers attached. Calm authority does the opposite. It makes correction feel safe. It keeps information flowing upward. It allows technicians to ask questions without bracing. It allows advisors to pause instead of rushing decisions they can't defend. Tone is also contagious across shifts and days. One consistently regulated leader can stabilize an entire shop. One consistently sharp leader can poison it without meaning to. Culture is built from repeated tone, not posters on the wall. If the shop feels tense, even on normal days, tone is usually the reason. If quality slips at the end of the day, tone is usually the reason. If technicians seem guarded, tone is usually the reason. This is not about being softer. It is about being clearer. When tone is calm, words land. When tone is sharp, words bounce. When tone is controlled, leadership scales. When tone is emotional, leadership collapses into micromanagement. The shop does not rise to your instructions. It settles into your tone. What happens when pressure decides your behavior instead of process? The first thing that happens is consistency disappears. Decisions change depending on the moment. Standards hold when the day is light and slip when the day is heavy. People stop trusting what normal means because it keeps moving. The second thing that happens is ownership fractures. When leaders react emotionally, responsibility gets passed around instead of held. Advisors rush to clear the counter. Technicians rush to clear bays. No one slows down enough to own the full outcome. Problems get handed off instead of resolved. Next, quality becomes negotiable. Steps that are always done quietly become usually done. Verification turns into assumption. Delivery becomes speed-focused instead of pride-focused. The shop still finishes work, but confidence erodes. Pressure-driven behavior also trains the wrong lessons. Teams learn that standards are flexible when emotions are high. They learn that urgency outranks accuracy. Over time, they stop checking unless they feel watched. That is how leaders become bottlenecks instead of builders. Customers feel this shift immediately. They sense inconsistency even when they can't articulate it. One visit feels smooth. The next feels rushed. Trust weakens because predictability disappears. Internally, morale takes a hit. Technicians feel blamed for rushed outcomes. Advisors feel blamed for missed details. Everyone feels like they are reacting instead of operating. Burnout accelerates because effort increases while control decreases. Perhaps most damaging, pressure-driven leadership creates dependence. The shop only runs well when a specific person is present and calm. When that person is tired, stressed, or absent, performance drops. That is not leadership. That is fragility. Process exists to prevent this. Process is what holds when emotion spikes. It gives people something to return to when instincts get loud. When process leads, behavior stays consistent. When pressure leads, behavior becomes unpredictable. The question is not whether pressure will show up. It always will. The question is whether the shop has something stronger than pressure guiding behavior. When leaders allow pressure to decide their tone, pace, and standards, the shop absorbs that chaos. When leaders return to process under pressure, the shop stabilizes. Every high-pressure moment answers one question for the team. Are we led by emotion or by ownership? Calm authority is built by replacing emotional reactions with repeatable ownership. The first move is self-regulation. Before directing anyone else, you control your own pace. You lower your voice. You slow your breathing. You reduce your word count. This is not passive, it is intentional. When the leader's nervous system stabilizes, the room stabilizes. Panic spreads faster than instructions, but calm stops panic immediately. Next comes ownership of the vehicle's journey. Leadership is not managing conversations, it is managing outcomes. You track the car from concern to delivery as if your name is on the RO. What isn't owned gets rushed. What gets rushed gets blamed later. Ownership keeps problems contained. Priorities are then decided without force. Calm authority means choosing what matters most and moving it forward without yelling, hovering, or micromanaging. You identify what is blocking labor, what is trapping a customer, and what single decision will stabilize the next hour. You do not try to fix everything at once. You restore order step by step. Verification comes before victory. Before any call, promise, or delivery, you verify. Dash lights checked. Interior checked. Exterior checked. Original concern confirmed when appropriate. Confidence without verification is performance. Verification turns confidence into authority. Delivery is handled with pride, not speed. You explain what was done and what you personally verified. You do not rush keys back to clear space. You protect the final impression because delivery is where reputation becomes visible. Correction is handled privately. Praise is handled publicly. This is non-negotiable. Public correction breeds fear and hiding. Private correction builds trust and improvement. Public praise reinforces the behaviors you want repeated under pressure. After heavy moments, leaders debrief, not to assign blame, but to learn. What worked? What didn't? What changes tomorrow? This is how leadership becomes culture instead of heroics. Under real pressure, explanations compress, but standards do not. You say less, check more, and refuse to trade calm for speed. This teaches the team that standards survive stress. At the highest level, this behavior is multiplied. Leaders model calm authority consistently so others adopt it naturally. Tone, pacing, and ownership become shared habits, not personality traits. Calm authority works because it removes fear from the system. When fear is removed, quality rises. When quality rises, trust follows. And when trust is present, the shop performs without force. That is how leadership holds when the day is heavy. The purpose of this chapter is to make leadership reliable under pressure. Calm authority allows you to raise standards without raising your voice. When you regulate yourself, own outcomes, and verify before delivery, the shop stops running on anxiety and starts running on command. The first goal is self-leadership. By controlling your tone, pace, and reactions, you prevent stress from leaking into the building. Your calm becomes the reference point for everyone else. This alone stabilizes quality and morale. The second goal is ownership of quality. Leaders who own the vehicle's journey end-to-end prevent rushed delivery, missed details, and reputation damage. Verification before delivery protects customers, technicians, and the brand at the same time. The third goal is consistency without force. When standards are upheld calmly and predictably, the team stops bracing for mood shifts. Technicians trust the counter. Advisors trust the process. Customers feel steadiness instead of urgency. Elite leadership is not louder. It is clearer. It replaces reaction with ownership and emotion with structure. Over time, this creates a shop that performs well even when the leader is tired, stressed, or absent. When calm authority becomes standard, yelling disappears. Rushing disappears. Micromanagement disappears. What replaces them is trust, pride, and repeatable execution. Leadership stops being heroic. Standards stop being fragile. And quality stops depending on how the day feels. That is what leadership foundations are meant to deliver.